Is that your office? What is that beautiful background behind you?
Yes, it is. Like we're living in the center of Utrecht. That's where I basically have my office,
Hmm.
and this is at the canal. Shall I show you around a bit?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, let me unplug, and then you'll see.
Take us to a tour.
Okay. So let me take you around. This is like a big cellar, as you can see.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm stepping out. You got a bit too much light, but here we are at the canal,
Hmm.
and as you can see, this is it's quite a nice place to work. Um, it's typically Dutch, basically, but I really enjoy working here. You can imagine.
Yes, I can. Most definitely can imagine that. I would like to take you around. However, yeah, the camera, the stand, the lights, I don't think that it will work. I can't really, yeah. Maybe, maybe next time I'll do, I don't know, a podcast from the pool or from the beach. Oh, that can be interesting. A lot of wind, that will be a challenge, but it's not as classic European. It's more of a Southern California style.
No, that's true. This is really typically Dutch, and you really caught a good moment because the sun is shining. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Let me plug on the electricity because otherwise we'll be stopped halfway a conversation.
Okay. No, that's beautiful. And the canoe was just passing by, and we could hear people having fun. It's a great area. One of the hardest things for me, I studied electrical engineering, computers and electrical engineering back in the day. And the hardest part for me was that I was living near to a student bar. And as I was studying for, I don't know, my final test or whatever that is, it's the middle of the night. You need to focus and study, and you hear people having fun. If there is something that kills you and demotivates you, it's other people having fun, and you go like, I really want to be there. I don't want to be here. But then it's like, okay, microwaves. How do they work? No, it's
Well,
microwaves. It's not
it's the same here. Like it's very tempting because especially on in the afternoon and on Fridays, like everyone's at the beach, at the canal, doing their stuff with boats and things like that, and having parties, which is of course very tempting to join as well. But like also at the terrace, work a bit, and then also yeah, think a bit. It sort of is the right balance for me, basically. I must say, like we used to actually have our office here, so we sat in this space. We sat with 8 people, but
Uh-huh.
like some of my colleagues didn't really find it such a nice environment. Yeah, in summertime, yes, because they could sit outside, but especially in wintertime, things were very dark, and they felt like that they were actually in a dungeon. So we decided to take another office, and that's upstairs at the canal at street level, and that's
Hmm.
pretty nice as well, and polite. So everyone is very satisfied with that experience, with that new environment. But like for me, I like it this way. It's sort of my wife calls it my man cave. So well, you basically know what kind of stuff that I'm keeping here, right?
I don't know. I was just looking at the poster behind you on the floor. What is that? I couldn't really see.
This one, you mean?
Yeah, from here it looks like Hendrix.
It is Michael Jackson.
It is Michael Jackson. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
it's a photo of Michael when he was here in Amsterdam just before releasing his first big album. And he was here actually. I know the photographer, and he's at that point Michael was 17, and he was
Hmm.
really just a nice kid, just carrying this his photo photographer thing with him, and trying to make nice pictures of the beautiful city of Amsterdam at his first visit. And like yeah, but well, like I really love his music. I'm a child of the '80s, and so that's it's also one of the things that that remind me every day of and also don't stop till you get enough. Huh? That's also a mantra that he has and that I cherish.
So you mentioned Amsterdam, so I'll just jump in directly to the first sort of the first topic. It's like DIA Amsterdam. Amsterdam. So by the way, are you calling it actually DIA or is it DIA? Am I the only
It's
one
DIA.
who's mispronouncing?
It's DIA. It's because it's the abbreviation for a digital insurance agenda. But
Uh-huh.
many people call it DIA, and of course that has a nice touch to it as well. Because DIA in Spanish, where we started, means day, and creates something like today. Dia is also like the picture, the dia negative picture, that the dia positive picture that you have on the future. So there's several connotations that we liked. So there's many people here in Europe who call us dia, but the right way to pronounce it is DIA.
So what is it? I'm surprised if for the American audience who is less familiar, and although I know many people from the US who travel to DIA, especially Amsterdam, what is it? How did you start it?
Well, we actually started from a totally different background. Both Reggie and myself are strategy consultants. And we used to advise the big names in insurance, like Zurich, Allianz, brands of Munich Re, in what they should do to move to everything digital and everything data. And helping them with those strategies, we found that banks are really way ahead of insurance companies. Banks really know how what takes place in fintech, and they know how to apply that quite rapidly, and that was really lacking in insurance. So we decided to help them close the gap and to connect those insurance executives with InsurTech leaders. Basically, that's what we started doing. We did the first event in Barcelona, and that took off pretty well. And then we decided to turn it into a business, basically, and that's what we did. So we just hosted the fourth time in Amsterdam, and we're going to do the fourth time also in Munich. And next year we are returning to Barcelona. That's where the 10th edition will take place. So we're returning sort of to the place where we started.
So
But
back to the origin, huh?
Yeah, so this is the fourth edition, and that's also one of our biggest events. Munich is pretty big as well. Munich is really an insurance capital in the world. We did some calculations, and the funny thing is that when you count the number of InsurTechs that are one way or the other related to Munich, they are in fact even larger than Silicon Valley. Can you believe that?
No, I cannot. And I heard about this small reinsurance that is out from Munich. I can't remember the name again. I think it was Munich Re. Okay, it's too early
Well,
for really
you're
bad
right.
jokes.
Of course, it has to do with the fact that both Allianz and Munich Re, they are actually on the same street in Munich, and they invest quite a lot in InsurTech and are also present in all the ecosystems that relate to InsurTech, and even also in Asia and in the US, of course. So that really helps. But at the end of the day, we see that. They are really the kind of companies that that are really committed to investing in InsurTech and using it also to not only improve their current business, but also to create new business models. And that's what we really like. It sort of also, of course, matches with where we come from and creating those new businesses for our former consultancy clients.
So, and here is another sort of a disclaimer about really bad jokes. So the next part will be sort of funny, my really bad attempt at doing that. And it goes like, so how come the Munich municipality didn't move Oktoberfest for Munich, DIA Munich, because ITC, it's too close. It's like a week difference. We hardly have time to recover.
No, you're right. Like the big thing is, of course, that we take that our current events taking place exactly at DIA Munich, and yeah, Oktoberfest is always so much fun, and we see that really, like people really crave to get connected again and to meet each other again, and we see that that is more and more the primary purpose of events such as ours. But adding
Mhm.
also the experience of Oktoberfest to it, like just visiting Oktoberfest with friends, with people that you know from the industry, it really creates new kind of bonds. And like I've been there a couple of times, and it's really challenging. Perhaps visiting Oktoberfest is even more challenging than visiting DIA. And especially if you combine, we can imagine that's an even bigger challenge. But like, it's really part of the fun, and also a nice atmosphere to get even more out of the personal connections that you'll create during the event.
Do you find difference between the agenda and the spirit of DIA Munich and DIA Amsterdam?
The differences are, of course, the location.
Yeah.
The whole setup is totally different, and the kind of atmosphere. Consequently, of course, we have the same informal vibe and things like that. But the people that we have on stage are different, and if a number of companies are the same, we always ask them to tell new stories. So there's always new stories about, and also like the kind of keynote speakers that we have in Munich are totally different than the ones that we have in Amsterdam. So, for instance, in Munich, we'll have the CEO of Lloyd's um, um, uh, uh, sharing a lot about her vision on, like the kind of resilience that we need to deal with climate change. An
Hmm.
important topic, of course, um, as a consumer, but also as an insurance company, of course. We also have someone from AXA who is heading all their efforts in open innovation, and a particular looking at all the new challenges that we have, but also the new opportunities that come with new data streams. Open innovation is really key to move things forward. Just to name two examples.
And how is the spirit in terms of the atmosphere itself? Amsterdam is known; it gives a
Well,
beautiful background for DIA Amsterdam, and I'm sure that Munich and of course Oktoberfest gives that
yes, that's
background.
you're touching a very important point. Like what we hear as feedback from the people who've joined us before is that they really appreciate the sort of festival vibe that we have on our events. So it's not just an event that takes place in the basement of a big hotel. What we do is we try to find very strange venues like former factories. And for instance, in Munich, the event takes place in a set of film studios, and of course like that really creates a different vibe, but also like the way that we like to actually be personal hosts also to the people that we receive. That is much appreciated, and like we like to hang out with the people, discuss things. Also from our background, we're very interested in knowing what actually is going to take place, what their worries are, what the challenges are. And so that gives us also a better feel on how they should cope with those challenges, and invite the right kind of InsurTechs on stage and the right kind of speakers who help, who actually really provide input to tackle those challenges. So that's what we really like, and all those informal conversations that you have at our events. That's providing a lot of input, not only for us but also for the people who join us.
I love the off-stage conversation. Those conversations that you actually have, what Jay always talk about, that serendipity encounter and meetings that you have, on the queue for the food or at one of the events, while you're waiting for your drinks or whatever that may be, and you meet someone, it's like, oh, you're from so and so, or you're dealing with so and so, how can we work, and you create a new relationship, right? It's not just using those matching applications and hey, let's meet next to table 5 kind of things. And
Absolutely, like we're totally on the same page, and that's also the kind of environment that we want to create. Huh? We want to help actually stimulate that kind of serendipity. And I must say that most of the times at the 2 days on our own conference, I maybe
mhm.
spent like 1 hour in the room in the listening to the audience, and most of the time I'm in the networking area. So, but maybe that's not advertising, but it is the reality actually. Like I get so much
Well,
out of being there and meeting people. To me, that's the most value.
well, you're the host. It's always walking the halls, making sure that everyone is happy, everything is working. There are
Yeah.
all the people behind the scenes that make sure that the operations and everything there is ready. You mic'd up. Someone didn't walk away with a mic. The speakers are, ready in the green room or wherever that may be. It's so much work. And needless to say, I'm sure that when we look at
Yeah,
Vegas, there
but
is
I
an
think it's almost
army of,
it's a lot of fun. Like
of course.
we're working towards like a peak,
Hmm.
which will take place in 4 weeks, and then we have 2 days of celebrating. We do that always with the team, and
Hmm.
that already starts the evening of the second day, and then the next week we're on to work again. But yeah, we really enjoy just creating that kind of atmosphere where people connect, where people do business. Like the measure of success is the amount of happy faces that we see at the event, and the number of smiles that we see at at the faces of our attendees.
In the past 4 years, and through the 10 conferences that you produce, what was the trend? How, what are the different topics that we see, on stage and, on the queue or in those random conversations?
Yes, yes, it's a very nice question. Like when we started, the whole InsurTech was defined as the challengers. And so we had a lot of challengers on stage, and the conversations that we had in the networking area, they all created those InsurTech on stage actually created sense of urgency in the networking area. So the people in the room, the insurance executives, they sort of woken up and they sort of realized that like they couldn't push the snooze button anymore. So they really had to move into action. So that was the kind of atmosphere that we felt also in the networking area. Then soon after, we saw the immediate reaction, and those were the insurtechs that are now like 99, 95% of all insurtechs that we have in our database are the enablers, the people who create an enterprise, a new enterprise with new technologies, to help those incumbents change their game. So that's the
Hmm.
second wave that we saw, and what we saw then taking place in the networking area was the conversations of, okay, very nice, but how can we scale this? And to be quite frank, that's still an important topic. Like there's a
Hmm.
lot of pilots going on, a lot of proof of concepts, but well, actually, one of the insurtechs recently told me, like, I don't want to work with that and that incumbent anymore because they're still on a pilot safari. What they're doing is they're trying to work with as many insurtechs in pilots as possible, just to create their own skill set, to improve their own skills. But it's still something that we need to keep in mind because at some point, like, scaling is so important. And then the third wave came. The third wave is about ecosystems, and that sort of started off like a couple of years ago. The importance of working together with companies in adjacent industries, and we saw that coming already for a long time. Like we saw that, for instance, in banking, there was already this trend, and we saw that hardly reflect in insurance, and that sort of initiated all sorts of discussions in the networking area. To what extent this ecosystem thinking is really going to take place. That was the first discussion. We also met a lot of people there who said we already have an ecosystem, our brokers, our claims assessors, our body shops, and things like that. So basically, shrinking the whole conversation. And we had others who said this is a massive opportunity to really create new added value for our customers. So that was sort of the kind of conversations that took place then. And what we see nowadays, we saw that already in at our last DIA, is what we call the fourth wave. And it is that InsurTechs are able to help incumbents to fulfill their social purpose by addressing all sorts of challenges that we now have, like waste, energy, like climate change. How to cope with that? Well, InsurTechs can provide a lot of instruments that could be very helpful in coping with that problem. So we see those four waves across the number of years that we've been active. And fortunately, we also see the kind of tech firms that help with that, and also the pace in which incumbents are embracing each of those waves. But to be quite frank, the three last waves, so that's the enabling, the ecosystem thinking, and the social purpose, they are still taking place sort of simultaneously currently. So it makes it interesting times.
Because I'm running around, I don't sit in the content in the different sessions, but I'm actually curious to see how insurance is going to, so not to lead, but at least to follow that process of thinking about ESG in a proper way and making sure that we have
Yes.
that economic infrastructure for it, or the safeguard for it.
Yes, definitely. Like what we see is that in our view, the insurtechs and also the incumbents of the future should tap into a couple of important trends, and I think you addressed a couple of them, right? I think that the pandemic really made everything that is related to health a bit more important than it usually was, and we also see that in, for instance, the number of people who are currently using their Fitbits, Apple Watches, just to keep track of their own health situation. So that's really still a very important conversation, even on a daily basis. What we also saw is that it definitely also changed the way that we look at where we work and how we live. So although like a lot of things rebounced, also working at the office again, we also saw that like it's not so common anymore to work 5 days at the office. We're more and more companies are actually trying to promote working at home at least a couple of days a week. So what we see is that has a massive impact on the kind of amounts that people invest in their homes to make their homes smarter and more intelligent. We also see that reflect in the amount of the mileage that people have on their cars. So that's definitely a second trend. And the third is also what you mentioned, like with the war taking place, the level of uncertainty and which is really unprecedented in our days. Since the Second World War, we haven't experienced a similar situation like that. And also combined with disinformation, misinformation, the need to be well protected and well informed is becoming more and more evident. And we believe that insurers really should take their part in that. And especially like during the pandemic, many health insurers basically were silent towards their customers on what they should do, how they should cope with situations, where they should go to. And the pandemic also made those incumbents aware that they needed to really speed up digital transformation. So that's good. But they're still in the middle of that process. And although they're moving forward, there's still the gap between what customers expect and what they deliver is still becoming bigger. So that's basically still a challenge.
Yeah, I was just thinking how the world becomes more and more complicated, especially, and we'll touch the war again and then we move on. Although, I can talk about geopolitics and the history between things and what we think is calm and what we think is, noisy, and the way that we perceive what's going on in the world is very disconnected from actually what's going on. Right, we consume everything from certain media channels, but let's not talk about that. But it's
in my country, I live in the Netherlands. Yeah. Those trends are really becoming very, very tangible. to give you an example, we're a very wealthy nation. But in the next year, the expectation is that the amount of people that live in poverty will almost double. And that's a situation that we have never experienced. And that really has to do with the rising cost of living and the rising cost of energy. And like energy also reflects not only in what you use in electricity in your house, but also the energy that's needed to produce food, to produce everything that you use. So the inflation is currently above 10%. And that's a number that we haven't experienced in 30 years. So the impact is quite severe. On the news, we see daily items on the amount of energy that we got stored to go through the winter, because everyone expects, or at least we need to work with a situation where we are not going to use Russian gas anymore. Those kind of uncertainties, they really play an important role in the lives of many people here, and basically across Europe. Because in the Netherlands, we're not even that dependent on Russian energy, but in other countries, for instance, in Germany, that is way above 50%, and the same for Italy, another big economy in the eastern part of Europe. It's even bigger, right? So
Yeah.
it is really becoming a very tangible thing that we see not only on the news, but also experience in our wallet. And so that makes it also exciting times, although more negatively excited. But we have to deal with it. And the question, of course, is what kind of role can people expect also from insurers in that respect? Of course, they cannot cover the cost, but to offer some kind of protection, I think it really raises the level of awareness that you really need protection to stay out of difficulties. And especially, we have a lot of independent contractors working across Europe who are hardly insured. So there's more and more awareness that this is an important group to also protect when times go even worse than it is today.
Yeah, let's talk about something a little bit more positive here.
No, I think that in spite of all the issues that we're dealing, the sun still shines, and the terraces are still full. So that's also something that, of course, is a bit strange on the one hand, and we just have new challenges, maybe different challenges that we had, but we still have challenges, and we will continue to have so also in the next decade. The nice thing is that what we saw is that it really triggered a new kind of energy, also with incumbents, and but also with consumers. Think about the speed in which we were all able to work from home.
Yep.
That took place in weeks, whereas in previous years, in every country there were long debates. Well, can we work at home? Can we not work at home? And then all of a sudden it was possible. We also see the same kind of energy taking place in insurance companies. So before they said, okay, let's gradually move to digital transformation. And because of the crisis, they became aware, okay, we need to speed up. So there's a lot of positive energy coming from that as well. And to be quite frank, we went through the same journey. We were in-person events, and all of a sudden we couldn't do that anymore. And we succeeded in switching to all sorts of things digitally that we could do throughout the year. And and we managed to maintain a profitable business. But that kind of new energy, sometimes you need that just to re-energize yourself and to change your own business model, your own perspective. So it's not all that bad, but you just need to cope with the situation. And we see that currently taking place as well. And that's also good. We see, for instance, take for instance, we live in the city center. I just showed you where we live.
Yeah.
You can imagine
Beautiful.
these are all monuments. So if you only want to change something on your house, you need to go to the local government, to the municipality, and they perhaps give you permission to do that. Now, with the current crisis, what we see is that I want to have solar panels on my roof. I get permission within 2 weeks. Things become fluid, and that's also the good thing, and that will help definitely to speed up things. But of course, the challenge for insurance companies is to stay in pace with that ever-changing environment, and to come up with the solutions. You mentioned cyber, very important, but are insurance really capable of keeping up with everything that's taking place? That's a big challenge, and I know that they are working on it. working on it very hard. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that is so important. And this is particularly an area where InsurTechs can help them with, because like there's so many InsurTechs that have been focusing on this square millimeter of cyber already for a long time and created so much skills and assets, competencies in that area, is that the only way that insurance companies can keep up is to work with those InsurTechs and really uh, get that energy, that entrepreneurial spirit, and also to move that forward. So this is really one of the areas where I think, okay, collaboration with InsurTech is essential, because otherwise you'll be outdated. Absolutely. This is really a very important point that you're raising, because we also see that reflect in InsurTech investments. Like the kind of investments really shifted from startup investment to scale-ups, to mature, to consolidation. Venture capitalists that really have a preference to make sure that their current portfolio is stays into place and stays healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and that is totally in parallel with what we see taking place in insurance companies. Like they first really liked all those pilots and proof of concepts, but they're coming more and more aware that in order to really transform their own business model, they can only work with mature insurtechs that went through those stages that you mentioned, that are more mature, that know how to scale. You just can't depend. You can't have your primary process depend on a startup. That's impossible. So that's really an important trend, which really, like, apart from the valuations that have become worse, we see that there's definitely a shift in where the funding takes place, and that is really in parallel with where incumbents prefer to do business, and that's with more mature, more scale-ups, which also sometimes make it a bit more boring, because you don't see those funny little exciting ideas of someone who invented something at the attic. But on the other hand, what you do see is insurtechs that can produce a track record, that can already show figures of what they can realize, and yeah, that helps also, the smaller insurance companies to tap into that new kind of suppliers who have really ready to use and fit for use applications that they don't have the time for to invent themselves. So yeah, there's a lot of good in there, but it also, yeah, sometimes you sort of miss the new sparks from the new startups as well. But at the end of the day, that's what happens when an industry becomes more mature.
I it's you warned me that we can talk for hours, and I was like, okay, we're going to talk about this, and that, and then we're going to turn right and sort of close the loop and talk about the work with Clarion events and future plans. But before we're going to hit that, I must add a little bit more about the startups and how the recession and COVID everything impacted. It's the deals that I see today shifted, right? So if earlier, and I see a lot of startups that are reaching out, and now we see more and more early stages, because they are very, as you mentioned, it's very exciting, but at the same time, I used to look more on later stages, B and later, and now we see more and more early stages, because this is the perfect time. In my humble opinion, this is the perfect time to invest in those super early stages, because this is the time for R&D. So when we go back to a bull market, yes, this is when they are already ready, and this is where they hit everything. Now they are building. But yeah, I love the fact that we see more and more, and very specific, because they have so much value to provide on those niche products with the technology, improving the underwriting, mitigating the risk, handling better the claims. And everyone who is dealing with back office, please talk to me. I love that gray area that everyone else is neglecting. Okay, can I take us now to Clarion and future plans?
Of course. What would you like to
Fantastic.
know?
Tell us something that is not already public. What's
It is public, right?
Yeah, it
I
is
think that
public. I think, yeah.
just days before DIA Amsterdam, Clarion Events, took a majority stake in our company, and for us that's very good news. What we saw that especially at some point you need a different scale, well, basically the same kind of story that we just had with InsurTech, to create more impact, and the kind of competencies that a company such as Clarion, with over 200 conferences around the globe, has available, it helps us really to become much better in virtually every process that we have in creating a better conference, in our marketing efforts, the conversion on our website, but also in the kind of formats that we can host at our event in the venue. So there's a lot of new competencies, and we immediately have 5 new colleagues from England joining our team. So we're now with 18 altogether,
Congratulations.
and we really got a very nice team now, which also enables us to do much more than we do nowadays. So everyone knows us from the events in Amsterdam and in Munich, the in-person events and the digital service that we have. But for the next year, we're going to do, basically a range of smaller and bigger events across Europe. And, also Tel Aviv, although it's not Europe. We're also speaking about Tel Aviv, Dubai even. But really in every insurance capital in Europe, not only in Munich and Amsterdam, but we'll host a big event in Barcelona and other events in London, in Paris and Milan, for sure. That's those kind of new possibilities. That's what we wanted, and that's what Clarion makes possible. So no, we're really excited, and we also feel that also for our team, new colleagues. We were based in Barcelona and in Utrecht, in the Netherlands, and now also in London. So we have a very diverse team, and everyone's really loves the fact that we got new colleagues, new knowledge, access to new competencies, it's going to be a couple of years that are going to be really excited with all sorts of new initiatives.
Amazing. Now, okay, let's close it down, because otherwise, as you said, we're going to talk for hours. So I'll ask you the same question that I'm asking everyone that comes on the show. Can you give us a recommendation? It can be a book. It can be what you need to check during a DIA Munich, a life hack, I don't know, whatever you like.
Well, I think that you already touched upon it. The whole idea at the end of the day is to meet old friends and to make new ones. And whatever takes place on stage is inspiring, and also initiates all sorts of conversations that take place at the bar. But the whole idea is, of course, to make sure that people connect, not just for the 2 days, but also after. And that kind of environment, that kind of ambience, that kind of experiencing, for instance, Oktoberfest together, really helps with that. And what we experienced so far is that many people really became business friends already for 5 or 6 years. And to see that smile on their face, that's what we take pride in. So I would say mingle a lot, speak to people a lot, meet your peers from across the globe, because basically they'll have the same challenges as you have. And it's a great way to reassess everything that you've been doing, and gear up for 2023, adjust your strategy plans, etc., etc. Just join us and you'll be inspired. Nothing more than that.
Amazing. Roger, thank you very, very much for joining me today. I hope that I even delayed you from your evening rituals and having fun by the canals. Thank you again.
thank you a lot, Gilad, for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll meet shortly.
We'll see you soon.